Oh, hello, you wrong'un. Adrian Allen here again. Look, this BBC Preenter X story is literally changing by the hour. I can tell you that this morning it hit the shelves and I went and got a copy so I could be very accurate in what I said. And I'm going to quote the stepdad because it's damning. Damning. And these clowns in Clown World have no clue what they're doing because the BBC is now eating itself. And I'm going to give you details on what the Metropolitan Police have now told the BBC to do. I'm going to give you details, really disgusting, grubby details of what Dame Janet Smith told the BBC in her review report in 2016. And have the BBC done anything with it? Have they taken her recommendations on board? Well, you can compare and contrast what's going on now as to what Dame Janet Smith said about the grubby Savile and what he got up to on BBC premises. Literally everyone he went to. Has she done anything? She spent 4 years inquiring about Savile and Stuart Hall-ish. And have the BBC, because the Director General's had to come out today on Radio 4 and I listened to what he had to say. We'll get to that. So there's lots of moving parts. Let me just kind of walk you through it. Let me give you clarity on what's going on today. Because I'm telling you, this story is nowhere near over. And some of the stuff I'm about to tell you, BBC's done. Busted flush. So what have we learned in the last hour or so? We learned at a press briefing this morning, I've got the Sun, but at a briefing this morning, BBC said individuals are entitled to a reasonable expectation of privacy. What? Why would they need to have privacy? Because I'm going to give you a couple of examples in just a little while. Tony Blackburn and Leslie Grantham, can you remember their cases? They weren't given anonymity. They weren't given any privacy. But the BBC did offer up more information about the timeline of what has happened. And this is disgusting. They say on the 18th of May, this is the BBC, the complainant, a family member, went to a BBC building to make a complaint about the behaviour of a BBC presenter. That's May 18th. The following day, May 19th, the complainant contacted BBC Audience Services, who passed the information onto the BBC's corporate investigations team. Now, I've already told you in a live and one of my own videos that I've been party to, as a former BBC radio presenter, I know the workings of the corporate investigations team. But I shall leave that here. The BBC, or the BBC's corporate investigations team, assessed the information and stated it did not include an allegation of criminality. Wait till you read what the stepfather says. But still merited further investigation, and they emailed the complaint, but there was no response. Woof, hot potato, woof. Not on my desk. On the same day, May 19th, they made checks to verify the identity of the complainant, which is standard procedure. Yeah, there's many things in the BBC that is simply standard. Nearly 3 weeks later, on the 6th of June, having received no response to the email, they called the mobile number they'd been given, but the call did not connect. What can I do, Governor? Well, you can try again. So that's the 6th of June. Remember that. Nothing further happened until last Thursday. Do you know what last Thursday was? Yeah, 6th of July. So they left it a full month. These are parents, a stepfather and mother, that are desperate to get their child help. They are desperate to get them into a safe space and place and stop the money coming through so that they can stop their drugs. But I'm going to read the stepfather's quotes in the Sun today in just a moment. So nothing further happened until the 6th of July last week. The Sun approached the BBC. Oh, I wonder why the BBC jumped. When the Sun says jump, the BBC said, oh, how high? The Sun contacted the BBC with allegations, and it was only the 6th of July, a month after they'd last done anything, that the presenter at the centre of it all was spoken to. Was that derriere covering by any chance? Just a question. It's a legitimate question that comes to my mind. So here's the important part. We weren't told this yesterday. We weren't. We just told that the Met and the BBC had some kind of virtual meeting. Zoom, if you wish. Might not have been, but it might have been. The Metropolitan Police yesterday asked the BBC to pause its internal investigation whilst detectives scope out further details. You know what that is, don't you? They didn't report that yesterday. They didn't, because I was reading everything. They didn't report that, because that's squeaky bum time. That is the BBC derriere putting like a rabbit's nose. Why? Because they don't want this presenter. I'm presuming here, because like 4 days into the story, they still haven't done the right thing, the BBC. But if detectives are trying to scope out further details, there could be a prosecution coming. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind. So the stepfather is quoted in The Sun this morning, saying, the BBC star is accused of paying the youngster for sexual phone and video calls, with the money allegedly spent on a spiralling drug habit. The stepdad said, without this money, my partner's child would have no drugs. Do you think this is a couple of concerned parents? They're not accepting any payment from the media. They just want the payment to the child stopped. They're trying to get their child away from drugs. And the BBC's mincing about. The stepdad revealed he told BBC bosses they had screenshots of contact between their child and the star. He said, we put the allegations to them for an hour. So this is the stepdad. They told the BBC about it for an hour. And remember the timeline I've just told you? They didn't do anything. Didn't do anything until the Sun went, oi, Bonnie lad, come here. We want a word. So according to the stepdad, they're not telling the truth. That'll be liars then. I told them the youngster was 20 and it had been going on for 3 years. Now, I'm not the brightest button on the blazer, but I know what 20 minus 3 is. Illegal. I told the BBC I had gone to the police in desperation, but they couldn't do anything, that's the police, as they said it wasn't illegal. So everything that the parents are saying and is being corroborated in varying news media houses is consistent. And yet, through a lawyer, the youngster involved is saying, yeah, it's rubbish. Rubbish. Well, he would, wouldn't he? The lawyer, that is. So you've got BBC Director General Tim Davie. He's saying, and I kind of get this, that he's got to balance a duty of care for the presenter X, the privacy of presenter X, oh, that's a convenient, and the public interest of literally, it's the only story that the whole country is talking about. And I quote BBC Director General Tim Davie, and this is really important. Really important, this one quote, because I'm going to get to Dame Janet Smith's report from 2016. BBC Director General Tim Davie, and I direct him, if he ever gets to see this, I direct the Director General to Dame Janet Smith's review report. Director General says lessons may need to be learned. Too late, Bonnie lad. You were told that in 2016 by a dame. There are still strong levels of trust in the BBC. I mean, which particular coffee house is he drinking coffee in? And it's not a good situation. You don't say. So, as I said, the police have asked the BBC to pause its Preenter investigation yesterday. Why? Well, they're having the detectives look at the granular detail of what's going on. And obviously, the screen grabs of transactions and stuff and contact, does it go back 3 years? So, the stepdad has said the BBC are liars. Or are they simply incompetent? Because it's such a massive organisation. There's tens of thousands of people work there. So let's just get the what so. The BBC made just 2 attempts to contact the family who made their first complaint on May 18th. Senior managers only put the claims to the Preenter last Thursday when the brown stuff was hitting the fan. Now, Katie Razzle, this morning on live TV, this is a kicker. Katie Razzle admitted, live on TV, and it'll be there if you want to go and find it. She admitted that the Preenter could return to work without being named. So all of this is flying around. And one of the Preenter X's colleagues is saying, because they're all colleagues if they work for the BBC, saying Preenter could return to work without being named. Are these people not getting this? This is the BBC on the rack. This is the whole of society turning against them because people are calling them liars. And there's a possibility, according to one of their reporters, that he could go back to work without being named. Look, the way I see it, if there's nothing to hide, why isn't he being named or identified? If there's nothing to hide, you don't even have to fall on your sword. Just tell your viewing public what has been going on. And if it is OnlyFans, I mean, in 2023, that's no biggie. Unless you're married, of course. And unless you've got kids who might be same age or older. Ooh, how grubby, seedy. So the BBC processes started in earnest when the Sun newspaper contacted them with the story. A month after they'd made very weak attempts to contact the family. So now, well, the BBC's not very happy. They're being caught out. So the BBC are pushing back against the Sun. So the BBC are asking the Sun, what evidence has the Sun seen to back up its allegations against Preenter X? Honestly, as a strategist, that's not a great first move. That's not, because that's going to come out. 2, how does the Sun explain the different ways it has reported the initial contact between the family and the BBC? Well, that's not strong either. I mean, have they got a junior reporter on this who's struggling to put a sentence together? Did the Sun ignore a WhatsApp to its reporter on Friday evening from the young person disputing the story? How would they know that? The BBC. Because the BBC have said, we don't know who it is. Don't know who it is, not been in touch. So, the Sun's response, this is strong. Because I believe that this story is a story of the ages. I can guarantee you, in every housing estate across this sceptred isle, there are parents dealing with their children dabbling or maybe becoming addicted to drugs. Which is such a shame, because it's the scourge of society. And this is just, in my view, it's just another set of parents dealing with something that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. So the Sun response is this. This has always been about a story about concerned parents trying to stop payments to their vulnerable child, which was funding a life-risking drug habit. It seems to us that the family is being attacked by the BBC for not fully understanding their complaint system. Fair point. Why doesn't the Preenter release a statement through a solicitor saying what did and didn't happen. It's through a third party, it's through a solicitor. They don't have to be named, they don't have to be identified. So why don't they come through and tell us the truth? Because the BBC is at stake here, and the BBC are being called liars by the son, by the stepfather, in the son. So there is one conclusion before I continue, that Presenter X is being protected. And the story, more importantly, is being managed. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One very close to this current story, as in it's very, very similar. Can you remember, it was May 2004, Leslie Grantham, Sunday newspaper printed photos of him sucking his finger on a video call with an undercover reporter, and he was doing other stuff, roughly the same as what the two individuals in this story about Presenter X were doing on video. He was doing it on video with an undercover reporter. Almost the same behaviour. He was sacked. BBC didn't hesitate. He was sacked. Tony Blackburn, Dame Janet Smith, her review report. She investigated from October 2012 to February 2016. And Tony Blackburn was sacked, bless him. He was rehired 8 months later. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't give you details of what that grubby, salacious, evil character called Jimmy Savile did at the BBC. But you've probably forgotten, so I'm not going to let you forget. In just a minute, I'm going to give you details. Now, it's the money. I mean, they do say, follow the money, but the money. So the presenter's giving away money. I don't know about you. I mean, I'm a tight northerner. I don't want to give a penny away. Literally. But the presenter's giving money away. Just carte blanche. Oh, have some more money. Have £5,000. Have £5,000. I mean, if the presenter's giving money away, I could do it. I'm getting married in a month. How here, man? You can drop me £5,000. I won't tell anyone. And if anybody asks, I'll just say, it's rubbish. Now, one, the presenter could feel sorry for this individual. But isn't there an old saying, a fool and his money are easily parted? I mean, it could be the OnlyFans theory that is going around. Could be OnlyFans transactions, but £5,000. What do you have to do on OnlyFans to get £5,000 off one person? I mean, I'm in the wrong job here. And then extortion, which I've already mentioned in another video. Blackmail, honey trap. But for £5,000, I'll keep my mouth shut. So the police have said this. The BBC are trying to say it's not illegal. It's not illegal. No, but it's immoral. And I don't want to have to look at somebody on the telly, because seemingly that's where he is, not on radio, on the telly. This man on the telly, I don't want to look at him going, I know what you did. Do I want to watch him? No, do I? No, I nearly swore that. Would I watch him? No. Because there's no integrity in the man. He's not come out and gone, look, this was the situation, this is what happened, this is what I did, and here's my rationale, or here's my reasons for what I did. Has he done any of that? No. So I've given you the examples of Tony Blackburn and Leslie Grantham, where the BBC are really quick to fire people. Look at Philip Schofield. He was a married man with kids. Well, we don't know. Presenter X, we don't know if he's married, single, kids, not. Don't know which bus he's on. I've no clue. Now, the Sun have said, the Sun are not naming. I've got this from Calvin Mackenzie, former Sun editor. Liverpudlians love him. But the Sun's not naming Presenter X because the burden of proof is not being met. So they may have some evidence, but it's like when there's a criminal case, it has to go to the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS first, and they review the case to see whether there is a possibility of conviction. And if it's a bit loose, a bit woolly, and there's not really a chance of a conviction, they just knock it back and say, no, we're not taking it to court because we have to save the public purse. So if the burden of proof is not being met, then they're not really going to push it. Calvin Mackenzie, former Sun editor, He said, oh, look, it's ad-led, it's commercial with The Sun. It's not legal, certainly. They're probably wanting to strike but not wound the presenter. Just name him, publish him, be damned. I tell you, the first time that any newspaper names Presenter X, it will sell out around the country. Literally, you won't be able to get a copy. They'll make a fortune, except if it's in Liverpool and it's The Sun, there'll be tens of thousands of copies left in Liverpool. Quite rightly, I'm with you. I'm quite rightly. Now, no one in this whole debacle is considering the public. I don't know about you. I am a cynical old tart. I will admit. But the public are suspicious about the BBC. Savile. Every time you talk about this to somebody, they'll go, Savile, Savile. It's the first word out of their mouth. Now, the BBC are the state broadcaster, and we have to pay for it. We are paying Presenter X's wages. Well, it's a bit like if you go to a bobby and you go, oh, I'm paying your taxes. Sorry, I'm paying your wages. And the bobby will turn around and go, yeah, and I'm paying your taxes. The BBC are the state broadcaster. And look, I'll hold my hands up and say the BBC have many things wrong with it. Many. But they also have some very good things about it. They've made some incredible, incredible TV moments. Incredible. But they didn't do anything about Savile. No. Nix. Nada. Nout. Absolutely zilch. Zero. So, first question, and I'm sure you have the answer. Who's paying for the youth's solicitor? Who's paying the legal bill for the 20-something? Deny, deny, deny. I said to you in the previous video, it's all about deniability now. This strategic game is all about deniability. Who's got the deniability? Parents are really strong. The 20-something? That's rubbish. Okay, give us some evidence. No, it's rubbish. Well, give us some corroborative evidence then. No, it's rubbish. Throw me solicitor. But the 20-something has not denied knowing Presenter X and has not denied receiving cash from Presenter X. This is claim versus counterclaim. This is, in the red corner, the BBC. And in the blue corner, the BBC, Presenter X, and maybe the 20-something. But in the other corner, it's the Sun and the parents, and everybody is trying to do the right thing by this 20-something. Not Presenter X, old enough, wise enough, or stupid enough to know better. So, the BBC have said, oh, no, we don't know the 20-something. We've not been in touch with him. Well, ask Presenter X. He's got his mobile number. I mean, look, I'm not the brightest button on the blazer, as I have said previously in this video. But I'm not stupid enough to recognise that if your presenter's got a mobile number for somebody that's involved in this case, why are the journalists not speaking with the 20-something? Oh, because the BBC's eating itself. And are you aware that there is an online safety bill going through the House of Lords currently? Like, literally, as you and I speak. It's being debated. Obviously, that's a House of Lords, so it'll be a mass debate. Can I just say, metaphorically, if Presenter X is innocent of all charges, that's metaphorically, we're being told it's not illegal. Might be immoral, but not illegal. If Presenter X is innocent of everything, sue the Sun. Go on, don't be a coward. Sue the Sun. Because if the Sun is calling the BBC liars, BBC, get onto your lawyers and then start having a go. Don't be asking really weak questions, man. Get onto them. Sue them. Because then the truth will come out, because we'll go into a court of law where they can say anything they want and name names. So the BBC state they don't know who the youth is. Presenter X does. Told you. Get his mobile number. And if an OnlyFans thingy-me-bob is used, use that term loosely, then detail when the payment started, when they started. Let's have a look at when the presenter started paying. Now, there may be an immorality in this story, whether Presenter X is single, divorced, married, kids, no kids, 3 dogs, and a townhouse in London. Who knows? Because we don't know who it is. So I believe this is a standoff. Who's going to blink first? The BBC or the Sun? Who's going to blink first? Down the barrel of a gun. Who? But all I know is the BBC are now back in the pockets of the politicians. It was that easy. I mean, well, you can make of that whatever you wish. Now, they're talking about the politicians. How can you tell when a politician's lying? Their lips move. Parliamentary privilege. Not everyone's forgotten about that, but what happens if somebody goes in the Houses of Parliament and goes, oh, do you know Presenter X? Yeah, it's him. So all the politicians can, gossip like old fisherwives and say, I know who it is. Who is it? Should I tell them in the chamber? A backbencher's already told the Daily Mail that they know who it is. As I say, the first newspaper to publish the details, it'll sell out, unless it's the Sun, not in Liverpool. So I want to get to Dame Janet Smith's review report. Now, you may not be au fait with this. It's only going to take me a couple of minutes, and I'm using this as the full stop on this video, kind of the end of the sentence, simply because it is breathtaking in her recommendations, and you can now guarantee that this has not been adhered to by the BBC. Are you sitting comfortably? So, Dame Janet Smith, in her review report 2016, she started the inquiry in 2012, in October 2012, and completed it and published it in February 2016. So that's near enough 4 years-ish, 3.5 maybe. So, in her report, Dame Janet Smith addressed the following questions. And this is all about Jimmy Savile's conduct. They also did a separate inquiry into Stuart Hall. Another utter wrong-un. So did Savile commit acts of inappropriate sexual conduct in connection with his work for the BBC? Question number 1. Question number 2. Were any concerns raised within the BBC, whether formally or informally, about Savile's inappropriate sexual conduct? To what extent were BBC personnel aware of inappropriate sexual conduct by Savile in connection with his work for the BBC? To what extent ought BBC personnel to have been aware of inappropriate sexual conduct by Savile in connection with his work for the BBC, as I say? Did the culture and practices within the BBC during the years of Savile's employment enable Savile's inappropriate sexual conduct to continue unchecked? So then Dame Janet Smith provided a number of recommendations. This is the page was like 700 pages. So this was a number of recommendations for reform for the BBC's internal processes based on her investigation. Remember those words, internal processes. Remember what the stepdad said about going to a building and then having to get in contact again and then hearing nothing from the 6th of June to the 6th of July when the Sun went door knocking? The review, which totaled more than 700 pages, found Jimmy Savile had sexually abused 72 people and had raped 8 people, including an 8-year-old at, and I quote, virtually every one of the BBC premises at which he worked. This is only the BBC, not the other places. Dame Janet Smith stated that some BBC premises at which he worked... Dame Janet Smith stated that some BBC staff members were aware of complaints against Savile, but did not pass the information to senior management due to the culture of not complaining. She described an atmosphere of fear, this is in 2016, still existing at the BBC, and that some of those interviewed for the inquiry did so only after being assured their names would not be published as they feared reprisals. A separate review into the offending of Stuart Hall found that he had assaulted 21 female victims at the BBC, the youngest of whom was 10 years old. between 1967 and 1991. So that's 80 plus 21. That's over 100 victims at the BBC. 100 victims between these two men. The report found that some BBC staff members were aware he was bringing underage girls into his dressing room for sex, but his untouchable celebrity status stopped them from passing complaints to senior management. So, here's where I feel this applies to the current situation within the BBC, and they haven't really learned anything and haven't taken on board Dame Janet Smith's recommendations. There were also a number of employment or business practices and internal cultural failings in relation to which Dame Janet Smith is critical of the BBC. Dame Janet Smith has to acknowledge the fact that even in relation to these failings, the point can legitimately be made that they were, at the time, probably common throughout business, industry, and the professions. For example, during the relative years, the BBC was a place of sexual discrimination and sexual harassment, and there was a failure on the part of management to take such problems seriously. The BBC was far from the only place where such problems occurred. However, as I say above, that's Dame Janet Smith, these are issues on which I do criticise the BBC. Had these failures been addressed at the time, it is possible that, at best, Savile would not have behaved as he did, or, at least, his activities would have been curtailed. In this part of my report, I do not need to do more than list these factors, although I will, in each case, identify where the issue was dealt with in more detail in my report. The failings at the BBC are, before I go into them, remember, the only thing that came out of this report was Tony Blackburn. Remember that? A national treasure being sacked. And it covered up this detail. Well, I won't say covered up, but it just obscured this detail. From Dame Janet Smith, the lack of an effective complaints process. She's critical of the BBC in 2016. The lack of an effective complaints process. We can see that in this case. The need for stronger lateral relationships. Well, they're talking to the police. The need or the lack of an effective investigations. A month when parents are desperate because their child is spiralling downward into a further drug habit, a crack cocaine habit. And the need for an effective human resources department providing proper support to employees as well as the employer. Now, I could go on and on and on, but there are synergies and similarities to everything that's going on at the moment. We've had a very detailed day, and I know this is quite a long video, so I apologise for that, but we have to get to grips with the facts, not people that are managing the story, not people that are managing images and names and presenters, but we need to be told the truth. All of it. We don't have a problem. I'm sure you don't. I don't have a problem with the truth because the truth is the truth. It's facts. And in this day and age, in a fast-moving media, I mean, as I say, it's changing by the hour. Sun's had its print today. There'll be another one tomorrow. I'm sure with more detail. So where will this story go? I think Preenter X is going to be named eventually, somehow, some way. I think there should be a move to protect the parents and the 20-something. And I do believe, irrespective of whether it's not illegal, it's immoral. And I think Preenter X should do the decent thing with integrity and fall on his sword and resign. Just go. My name's Adrian Allen. If you've liked the video, please hit the thummy thing, the like, and thank you for your subscriptions. But most of all, thank you for your indulgence. This is going to grow on and on and on over the next few days. I do believe there will be a huge interview with someone involved in this case very, very soon. In the newspapers, written up. I'll see you in the next video.